going to be the first 4 of the last 5 completed calendar quarters before the person applied for benefits, meaning which is defined as filing a claim. This is the term used for applying for unemployment insurance benefits. So what does this mean? What is the base period? Let's use the current month as an example. Let's suppose we were operating under the regular rules and that a person applied for UI in the month of April 2020. Well, the last 5 completed calendar quarters would have been January 2019 through March of 2020. If you count that up, that's 5 quarters, each quarter, of course, being 3 months long. The base period would be the first 4 of those 5 quarters, namely January 2019 through December 2019. So ordinarily, a person must have worked, earned a certain amount during those 4 quarters in order to be eligible for unemployment insurance. Now, some states provide an alternate base period. They say, well, if you didn't have enough work during the regular base period, we'll give you a different opportunity to qualify, such as the last 4 completed calendar quarters. And you would have had to have worked a certain amount during that period to be eligible. Now, in some states, part-time workers can be eligible for unemployment insurance, but most states, 27 of them, require people to be working full-time to qualify for UI. Now, anybody who becomes unemployed under the regular rules has a right to file a claim, and they're encouraged to, because in some cases, people who might not ordinarily think that they would be eligible can be under certain circumstances. But of course, filing a claim or applying for benefits doesn't guarantee that you'll be eligible. You generally have to be unemployed through no fault of your own. Generally, you would not be eligible, or you would have penalties like a delay in when you would become eligible. If you were fired for misconduct, misconduct generally has to be demonstrated, proven by the former employer. If the worker has quit a job without good cause, and the worker would need to show that they quit for good cause, however that's defined in their particular state, and usually the state agency that oversees unemployment insurance is the one that's going to make decisions about what constitutes misconduct or good cause. If a person refuses a suitable job offer, they could be penalized or ineligible. Or if they were no longer able or available for work. Remember, to be eligible for unemployment under the regular rules, you have to be ready, willing, able, and looking for work. Now, there are certain groups of workers who are generally not covered under UI pursuant to the regular rules. Self-employed workers are not, certain workers who are employed by their own families, elected officials, judges, members of the state National Guard generally are not covered. So we said that you have to have become unemployed through no fault of your own. Let's go into a little bit more detail then. Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like this is a duplicate slide. Let's move on to how much you can receive and for how long. So the rules will be different on these details from state to state, but generally, UI replaces about half of a worker's after-tax earnings up to a maximum benefit amount, and benefits are paid weekly. And the maximum benefit amount will vary from state to state. I've looked at a few states recently, and just to give you a few examples, Missouri's maximum weekly benefit was $320 a week. Maryland's is $430, and New York's is a little over $500 a week. So there's a fair amount of variation among states according to what the maximum benefit can be. There's also some variation about how long you can get benefits. In most states, it's generally up to 26 weeks, which is 6 months. But some states offer fewer, others offer more weeks. Missouri, again, only offers 20 weeks. Massachusetts offers 30. So there's still some variation from state to state on those details. Dallas, do we have any questions or comments so far?
No, I don't see any yet.
Nothing yet. Okay. There probably will be after this next segment. We're going to be talking about the changes to unemployment benefits made by the CARES Act. So the CARES Act expands unemployment assistance in 3 critical ways if a state enters into an agreement with the federal government. And I would wager that most likely every state has entered into such an agreement because they can't afford not to with all the federal money that's being offered and the expanded unemployment benefits. So what are the 3 ways? To summarize, the first way enables certain people who ordinarily would not be eligible for UI to get unemployment assistance. The second way is for people who are eligible for unemployment insurance for UI, but it gives them more money, gives them a higher benefit. And the third way is for people who were eligible for UI, but who used up their maximum allotment. And the third way enables those people who've used up their regular UI benefits to get benefits longer and to get higher weekly benefits. So we're going to go into details about all 3. So the first way that the CARES Act helps workers is for those who would ordinarily not be eligible for UI. They'll be able to get a type of unemployment assistance called pandemic unemployment assistance. So this is a cash benefit for certain workers who don't qualify for UI in the regular way. Now, it is technically, pandemic unemployment assistance is technically not unemployment insurance. It's not an insurance program. Rather, these are payments administered by the states to certain unemployed or partially unemployed people that are solely funded by the federal government. Now, we're going to go into some detail about who may be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. First of all, the CARES Act, and I'm quoting, says that a person must be unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work for at least one of 10 reasons that are very specific and related to COVID-19. So you have to be unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work. And it has to be for at least one of 10 reasons that we'll cover in a couple of slides. But first, I wanted to tell you who it expands eligibility to, which groups of people who usually would not qualify for UI can still get pandemic unemployment assistance. The big one is self-employed workers. Actually, it's just one of the big ones. So a person could be self-employed with an official business. They could be independent contractors who might be working just for a single employer, but the employer's not taking taxes out of their pay. They're not on the payroll. They have to pay their own taxes. Technically, they're considered self-employed, even though they might not think of themselves that way. Freelancers and even gig workers are eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. Remember, self-employed workers are not eligible for regular UI. Workers who are seeking part-time work rather than full-time work, and most interpreters of the law that I've read have indicated that it should provide benefits to people who were working part-time. So remember, we said that in most states, in 27 states, you have to be working full-time and then become unemployed to qualify for unemployment insurance. But you only have to have been working part-time to be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. Workers who don't have enough work history to qualify for UI under the regular rules. So if somebody didn't work long enough or didn't earn enough during the base period, they wouldn't qualify for UI, but they could get pandemic unemployment assistance. And the law says workers who would not otherwise qualify for UI, meaning under the regular rules, and it doesn't specify other reasons, which suggests it's pretty open-ended. Now, what those other reasons might be, I'm not sure, but since this is brand new, has not been tested, it's hard to say how states will interpret it. But nonetheless, this is a broad range of workers who would not ordinarily qualify for UI, but can get this unemployment assistance through the CARES Act. So I mentioned that you have to be unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work for at least one of the following 10 reasons. And I'm going to discuss each of them on the next 3 slides. Number 1 is being diagnosed with COVID-19 or having COVID-19-like symptoms and waiting for a diagnosis. Number 2 is having a household member who's diagnosed with COVID-19. 3 is caring for a family member or another household member who's diagnosed. 4th is being unable to work because you have to stay home and take care of a child or another household member who can't go to a facility because it's closed due to COVID-19. The most common examples would be children who can't go to their school or their daycare because those facilities are closed due to COVID-19. Another example might be an adult with a disability who can't attend their day program or supported employment program because it's closed as a result of the virus. 5th is the person can't go to their workplace due to a COVID-19 quarantine. So they've been quarantined and can't go out to their workplace. Number 6, you can't go to your workplace because a healthcare provider has advised you to self-quarantine. Number 7, you were scheduled to start a job. You had a job offer, had a start date, but you couldn't start the job. You do not have a job, the law says, due to COVID-19. So that might include somebody whose job was canceled, or for some reason they could not do that job any longer, even though they were scheduled to start. It could also be somebody who had just started the job, but then was laid off or for some reason couldn't continue. 8th, due to the death of a head of household, the individual has become that household's breadwinner or primary support. And that would be if the head of household died due to COVID-19. 9th, and this is one that's going to be subject to a lot of interpretation. We have no idea what this means quite yet. But number 9 is you had to quit a job as a direct result of COVID-19, though that is not defined and examples are not provided in the law. Also, I don't expect with the timeframes involved that there will be regulations that are promulgated to more clearly answer some of these questions. What I can say is that some key members of Congress have indicated that they did not intend reason number 9 to apply to anybody who just simply thought that they'd be safer if they quit their jobs and stayed home. So I think it's safe to say that the criteria are going to be more demanding than that. I cannot tell you what they might be specifically, but I would think that they might look at, for example, somebody having to quit a job because they were at particularly high risk of contracting COVID-19 and being seriously impaired or killed by it. Perhaps people with serious underlying health conditions, people who are older, but that's just speculation. And then number 10, and this is going to be a common one, the workplace is closed due to COVID-19. And I would interpret the workplace is closed due to COVID-19 also applying to businesses that self-employed people operate that may not have really a typical conventional workplace, but there's no work due to COVID-19. I received a question when I did this webinar last week from a questioner who said, well, I'm working with someone who's a photographer and has absolutely no work at all as a result of COVID-19. Could they be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance? And my answer was, most likely, yes, they should certainly file a claim because they're self-employed, and you could say that their workplace is closed due to COVID-19 because there's no work at all. Now, there are a couple of circumstances in which a person would not be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance, even if they met one of those 10 criteria and they were employed, partially unemployed, or unavailable to work. So, and those two are, if the person is able to telework with full pay, then they won't qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance. Also, if they're receiving paid sick leave or other paid leave, and this would also include severance pay. So in other words, if somebody gets full pay, either through teleworking or paid leave, they won't qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance because they haven't suffered any financial hardship. However, suppose a person has a job, ordinarily they don't telework. During the COVID-19 emergency, their employer lets them do some of their tasks through telework and pays them partial pay because through telework, they're only able to perform some of their duties. But you could argue that they were partially unemployed because their pay has been reduced. They can only earn some of their pay, their regular pay, by teleworking. Well, that person would be partially unemployed and they could still qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance. Also, what if a person's paid leave runs out? If a person's paid leave stops, at that point, if they met the other criteria, they could qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance. So how much will pandemic unemployment assistance provide? What's the cash benefit amount going to be? This part is rather incredible. If a person qualifies for it, and remember, they could be self-employed, they could be doing part-time work, they may not have earned enough, working long enough during the base period to qualify for regular UI, but they're unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work for at least one of those 10 specific reasons we looked at. They meet those criteria and they're not getting full pay, through leave or telework, they'll qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance. They will get at least half of the average UI benefit for their state per week, plus an additional $600 a week. And that extra $600 a week is funded until as late as July 31st. And when I say as late as, that just means so long as the person still qualifies. For example, they haven't gone back to work. So let's consider the lowest benefit state that I mentioned earlier, Missouri. Well, Missouri's average unemployment insurance benefit is $266 a week. Half of that is $133 a week. So someone in Missouri who gets pandemic unemployment assistance will get at least $133 a week plus an extra $600 a week for a total of $733 a week. And some people can get even more than that. And that's until as late as July 31st. But pandemic unemployment assistance lasts a maximum of 39 weeks, which is 9 months. And the program ends December 31st of 2020. So what would happen if a person got pandemic unemployment assistance and they had only used up a few months of it, the end of July, and the end of July came? Well, at the end of July, they'll no longer get the extra $600 a week starting in August. They'd no longer get that extra $600, but they could still get a cash benefit of at least half of the average UI benefit for the state for the remainder of their 39 weeks. But even if they haven't used up all 39 weeks, they won't get any more pandemic unemployment assistance after December 31st of 2020, because that's when the program ends, unless Congress extends it longer. Okay, so pandemic unemployment assistance is a big one, and that's why we spent so much time on it. The next two ways that the CARES Act expands unemployment benefits are, number two, pandemic unemployment compensation, which is different from pandemic unemployment assistance. By the way, this is rule number one for government bureaucrats trying to confuse the public. Give different benefits very similar names. Pandemic unemployment assistance, pandemic unemployment compensation. It's hard to keep them straight because they sound so much alike. But pandemic unemployment compensation is a benefit for people who do qualify for regular UI benefits and receive them. What pandemic unemployment compensation does is simply to add on to that regular UI cash benefit the person gets, and they get that extra $600 a week until as late as July 31st. And then finally, with another confusing name, pandemic emergency unemployment compensation is a cash benefit for people who did receive regular UI benefits under the regular rules, but they used them up. They used up all of their allotment. And this benefit gives them an extra 13 weeks, an extra 3 months of benefits. And the benefit amount that they'll get is the same amount that they were receiving under the regular rules, plus that extra $600 a week through July 31st, if they remain eligible. But to get this benefit for people who've already exhausted their regular UI benefit, they do have to be able, available for work, and actively looking for work. The law does say they need to be actively looking. And like the other programs, this one ends December 31st of this year. Okay, and I'm going to pause here because I imagine there may be some questions. Do we have anything in the chat so far, Dallas?
Yeah, we have a lot actually. You want me to
Okay,
just go through? Okay.
sure.
Okay.
We'll break for a little while.
Okay, sure. I'll read as many as I can.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from Rachel. She asks, I guess you can't qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance if you were terminated, correct? I have a client that was terminated but now cannot find a job due to COVID, but he did not qualify for regular unemployment insurance.
Um, well, Rachel, I think we need to know more details about the reason the person was terminated. Um, of course, under the regular UI rules, if they were terminated um, for good reason due to gross misconduct, um, then they would generally not be eligible for regular UI benefits. Interestingly, though, the CARES Act doesn't say that about pandemic unemployment assistance. It doesn't say you're not eligible if you were fired for misconduct. Um, so it's hard to say how states will interpret that. I haven't seen any discussion by the federal government about people who were fired. I can tell you that even under regular UI rules, if a person was fired because they just couldn't do the job, but it wasn't for misconduct, they could be eligible for regular UI, and presumably they'd be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance if they met all the criteria. So what I would say is if a person was fired, they're unemployed now, they didn't qualify for regular UI, they should certainly go ahead and file a claim, basically apply for benefits to see if they might be determined eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. It's worth a try. Next question, Dallas.
Yeah, we have another one from Rachel who she wants to know, so if you have to stop working due to taking care of children because daycare closed, you can collect even if your workplace is still open. So I guess you would have to take a leave of absence from work and be able to collect pandemic unemployment.
That's right. Now, whether your inability to go to work would be determined to be a leave of absence or something else, that's not specified in the law. But it does say if you are unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work. And that third condition would be the one that would apply in the situation you described, Rachel. And if it was for one of those 10 reasons, and the one that you specified was somebody had to stay home with their kids because the daycare was closed, then they could be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. Yes. Okay, next question.
All right, this is from Michael, who wants to know if a workplace has closed, i.e., a bar or restaurant, but the employer is still paying furloughed employees a portion of their salary, are they covered by number 10? And he adds, as well, what if someone is taking unpaid leave at a workplace that is otherwise open due to health conditions, etc., but they haven't technically quit their job?
Yeah, good questions. Um, the first one first, would somebody meet condition number 10? And I'm going to come back to that. The workplace is closed due to COVID-19. If they were receiving furlough pay, but the furlough pay was only a portion of their regular pay. Again, this is speculation on my part. We have no regulations that spell this out. But my interpretation, which you should take with a grain of salt, is that in the situation you described, Michael, that person would be partially unemployed because they'd be getting some pay, but not full pay through the furlough. And as you pointed out, their workplace was closed due to COVID-19, a bar or a restaurant. So I would say that person would appear most likely eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance on the basis of being partially unemployed. And Dallas, could you repeat the second part of the question?
Yeah. He says, what if someone is taking unpaid leave at a workplace that is otherwise open due to health conditions, etc., but they haven't technically quit their job?
Okay. Um, the law doesn't say anything about that particular situation. It does say that you have to have quit as a direct result of COVID-19. That's number 9. However, if um, a person, I'm going back to criterion number 6 here, if a person couldn't go to their workplace because a healthcare provider told them that they shouldn't go, that they should self quarantine, they could meet condition number 6. Um, or if this is condition number 5, if they couldn't go to the workplace due to an actual quarantine related to COVID-19, then they could still potentially qualify. So I would say yes, possibly, and that person should apply, should file a claim as well. Okay, and next question.
This is another one from Rachel. I think the first part you already answered, but the second part is about orientation. She wants to know if you were supposed to start at McDonald's and went through orientation, but were then told that you cannot start because of COVID-19 and lobby being closed, can you qualify?
I would say yes. I would say that one met the criterion number 7, that you're scheduled to start a job and you do not have a job or can't get to the job due to COVID-19. So I'd say yes, most likely person should file a claim. Next question.
Okay, this is from Anne, who says, what if someone needed to quarantine due to high risk of a family member, e.g., elderly parent undergoing chemotherapy? Would an individual who needed to stop working to protect a family member qualify?
Yeah, I wish that I could answer that one definitively, but I can't because we don't have specific criteria. But that sounds like it could be a strong argument to me for the person meeting reason number 9, had to quit a job as a direct result of COVID-19, or perhaps had to self quarantine, which was reason number 6. So we again, we don't have any federal guidance on how these criteria are going to apply. They're not spelled out in any greater detail in the CARES Act, but it sounds like that person has a strong argument to make at least, and should certainly be encouraged to file a claim. Next question.
This is from Jennifer. She says, if you are a hair salon owner, would this qualify for the pandemic assistance? The workplace is closed because of the city and state's stay-at-home order.
I would say yes. Yeah, that would be reason number 10. The workplace is closed due to COVID-19. And if you were unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work for that reason, then you could potentially qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance. And if you were the self-employed salon owner, although you wouldn't qualify for regular unemployment insurance as a self-employed person, you could still get pandemic unemployment assistance. And we'll do one more question and then.
All right. This person wants to know, would the pandemic unemployment assistance be retroactivated to the date that they filed their initial claim?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. The pandemic unemployment assistance can be retroactive as far back as the person met the criteria and the state had an agreement in place with the federal government. Now, the CARES Act actually says that it can be retroactive as far back as January 27th, but certainly no state had an agreement in place on January 27th, particularly since the CARES Act wasn't even signed until, I believe it was March 27th. However, there are some states that entered into agreements very quickly, and people can get pandemic unemployment assistance retroactive to around March 29th. So yes, a person can file now, and once they're approved, it can be retroactive to most likely the tail end of March or early April, depending on when their state entered into the agreement. So that's another nice thing about the law. Okay, I'm going to move ahead, but I am going to break again for questions. And any questions that I can't answer with the time we have during the webinar, I will try to answer and send out answers to all of them by email later. Okay, so let's move on to how to apply or how to file a claim. Well, the first thing you'd want to do is find the website for your own state's unemployment insurance program. And you can find that using the link on slide 24 here, servicelocators.org/OWSlinks.ASP. That's the way you can find your own state's UI website if you don't already know what it is. Now, most states allow you to file a claim online or by phone. Word to the wise, right now, it's unwise to try to do anything by phone regarding unemployment insurance because the phone lines are just completely overwhelmed, probably in every state. Since so many millions of people are filing claims, it's best to file online. Now, there are some states that might require a person to file a claim in person, usually at an American Job Center in regular times. I don't know what those states are doing, if they're hustling to get an online claim system set up, but I would hope they are. Now, most states do allow people to file claims online. And states under regular rules, as I mentioned earlier, may require people filing claims to register for work through their employment service office or American Job Center. People are not going to be required to go to an American Job Center in person under the current circumstances, I believe, probably in any state. So after you've filed a claim, how long does it take for your benefits to start? Ordinarily, usually within 2 to 3 weeks or so, depending on the state. Given the huge volume of claims that are being handled in every state now, I imagine it may take longer. Now, there are some states that ordinarily have a 1-week waiting period. This means you might be found eligible as of one particular week, but they won't give you a benefit for that week. They won't give you a benefit starting until the following week, although they may pay the first week's benefit at the end of your benefit period after you've stopped receiving all other regular payments. But that waiting period is usually going to be waived for claims that are filed due to COVID-19, partly as a result of an incentive that the CARES Act provides to states. Now, once your claim is approved, you're approved for benefits, your work isn't done, unfortunately. You still have to file weekly or bi-weekly claims, depending on the state, in order to continue your benefits. That may usually be done by phone or mail. In many states, it can actually be done online. And I would hope that most states are going to allow people to continue filing those weekly or bi-weekly claims online. And when you file your claim, you're not only asking for payments, but you're reporting any changes in your circumstances that might be relevant to unemployment benefits. If you started working, you have to report your earnings, any job offers, or any job offers you refused. Now, it's important to note that unemployment insurance benefits are taxable. and that's both the regular UI benefits and the additional benefits that are possible through the CARES Act. Now, the good news is when a person files a claim for unemployment benefits, they are given the option to have taxes withheld from their benefits. I highly recommend that people choose that option. They don't have to, though. But what happens if they don't have taxes taken out of their unemployment benefits? Well, at the end of the year, they may end up with a big tax bill that they can't afford, especially if they've spent all the unemployment benefits they've received. So particularly during this time when people are going to be able to get unusually high amounts of unemployment benefits, it's important for them to have a plan in place to be able to pay the taxes on those benefits, because it's not like a paycheck where your employer is taking money out of your pay. If you don't ask the state to take money out for taxes from your unemployment benefits, then you're going to have to pay the full amount of taxes at the end of the year out of whatever you have left. So how do earnings affect UI benefits? Well, generally, if a person goes back to work full-time, their UI benefits will stop because UI is designed to just tide people over until they go back to work full-time. If a person goes back to work part-time, then their earnings will reduce their UI, and it's usually by not much less than dollar for dollar. In a couple states I've looked at recently, a person working part-time might be able to keep the first maybe $40 or $50 a week that they earn, but every dollar they earn above that amount would reduce their UI benefit dollar for dollar. And as I said, the earnings have to be promptly reported when you're getting UI each week with your weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the state, claims file. Okay, and I'm going to pause before we get into interaction with SSI and Medicaid and Social Security Disability and Medicare. Dallas, do we have any new questions yet?
Oh, we have a few that you didn't get to last time, if you want me to read those.
Let's do those.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Michael. If someone is working 2 jobs and loses one due to COVID-19, are they still eligible?
Yeah, that's a good question, Michael. And I believe it's going to depend on whether the jobs are part-time or full-time. For example, if somebody has a full-time job and a part-time job, and they stop the part-time job, even though they've stopped the part-time job for one of the COVID-19 related reasons, one of those 10 reasons, they would appear likely to meet the criteria for pandemic unemployment assistance, but they still have a full-time job. I tend to doubt that they will be approved for pandemic unemployment assistance. However, that's just my speculation. The law does not specify it. And if I were that person, I'd go ahead and file a claim anyway, because they could argue that they were partially unemployed. They were not getting the same money they were before the COVID-19 emergency. It wouldn't hurt for them to apply. But I would think the odds would be much less that they'd be approved than if they were working 2 part-time jobs and they couldn't continue one of them for one of those COVID-19 related reasons. Next question.
Okay, this is from Stacy. She wants to know, what about a college student that was away from home attending school and was working part-time? School went online, so the student had to move home and had to quit that part-time job.
Yes, I would think that person could be potentially eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. And I'm flipping back here. Now, in the example you gave, you didn't say whether the job was on campus or not. If the job was on campus, and therefore the workplace was closed because the whole campus was closed, then that person would meet condition number 10. Now, if they couldn't get to the job even though it was off campus because the campus closed, they no longer had housing and they had to move back home and therefore could not go to the workplace. Although that doesn't really exactly fit any of the 10 criteria precisely, I think that I would go ahead and apply anyway. Perhaps it might meet condition number 9, for example, had to quit a job as a direct result of COVID-19. Well, if you've lost your housing, you know, your home, your dorm is closed due to COVID-19. The entire campus is closed, even though your job is off campus. You have to move back home. I would say you had to quit your job as a direct result of COVID-19. So that one may be a gray area, but I certainly think the argument could be made, and I would encourage that person to file a claim. And any more, Dallas?
Yeah, we have one more. This one
Okay.
is from Gwen, who says, what if you are an essential employee and your employer has work for you, however, you are not wanting to work because of fear over COVID-19?
Yes, that's going to be an issue number 9, a condition number 9 issue. If you had to quit the job as a direct result of COVID-19. And again, this one is going to be tested in the coming weeks and months. But we really have no idea at this point how they're going to determine whether you had to quit a job as a direct result of COVID-19 for a reason that would pass muster as satisfying condition number 9. What I can tell you is that members of Congress have been quoted as saying that the CARES Act was not intended to apply to anybody who just quit their job because they thought they would be safer staying at home than going to their workplace. So that suggests that they're going to have a better reason than simply, I just thought I would be safer. And I would suspect, this is just speculation on my part, that having underlying health conditions, being older than age 60, might help make the case that the person had to quit. Now, on the other hand, there was another reason here that I think a person might take advantage of if they had a healthcare provider who supported them. And that's reason number 6. Can't go to the workplace because a healthcare provider has advised the person to self-quarantine due to COVID-19. So if you just quit and you didn't have the backing of a healthcare provider, then you're going to have to make a case for reason number 9. But if you have asthma, you have heart disease, you're 70 years old, and you're working in a job that you have to go to, you can't work remotely, and your healthcare provider says you have to quarantine yourself, you cannot go to this workplace or you are risking death, then I think, particularly if you get a letter from the healthcare provider, that might provide you with good evidence that you'd meet condition number 6. But I apologize, this is all really speculation on my part, but I would encourage all of the people, all the situations that you've described, I would encourage people in those situations or similar ones to at least file a claim, at least give it a try. Okay, any others? Any other questions at the moment, Dallas?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, now we're going to move into how these benefits affect SSI and Medicaid, and then we'll get to Social Security, disability, and Medicare. So starting with SSI. So we're going to talk about the regular rules first. If a person receives regular UI, unemployment insurance, how does it affect their SSI? First, let me specify that, of course, in order to qualify for regular unemployment insurance, a person has to have worked before they became unemployed through no fault of their own. And typically when a person gets SSI and they work, their SSI is reduced. So let's consider a situation where a person was getting SSI, then they went to work, and their SSI was reduced. Maybe they were receiving just a very small amount of SSI and their earnings. And then they became unemployed and qualified for UI benefits. The UI benefits are considered unearned income. That's as opposed to earned income, which would be things like wages and self-employment earnings. Unearned income reduces SSI almost dollar for dollar. If you received unemployment benefits of $520 a month, your SSI would be reduced by $500 a month. They count all but $20 of your unearned income against your SSI. Now, what happens if your UI income is high enough to reduce your SSI payment all the way down to zero? Well, then your SSI payment is suspended. You're going to get zero SSI. And ordinarily, in most states where a person is automatically eligible for Medicaid if they get SSI, their Medicaid would stop after their SSI stopped. The amount of time it would take before the Medicaid stopped may vary, may differ from one state to the next, but usually within a few months, the Medicaid would stop. In certain states known as 209B states, where a person is not automatically eligible for Medicaid if they get SSI, they have to apply for it separately. They may still be ineligible for Medicaid after their SSI was suspended, depending on the state rules. Now, suppose, though, that person whose SSI stopped and their Medicaid was about to stop, or maybe already did stop due to their unemployment benefit, at that point, that person may have worked long enough to become eligible for a different disability benefit known as SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. And for most people, not all, but for most people, SSDI pays a higher amount than SSI does. That person might apply for SSDI. And as we'll talk about momentarily, a person who receives unemployment insurance can also receive SSDI. Now, what if the person doesn't qualify for SSDI, their SSI and their Medicaid stopped or are about to stop due to their UI benefit? Is there another way they could keep Medicaid? There may be. Medicaid rules differ greatly from state to state. Some states have other ways to get Medicaid that a person may be eligible for. And one of them that's very common is a program called a Medicaid buy-in. This is a program for working people with disabilities who meet certain other conditions and who don't get Medicaid another way, such as through SSI. With a Medicaid buy-in program, usually a person can have even very minimal earnings and still qualify for Medicaid. So a person who's getting a UI benefit and whose SSI was suspended and their Medicaid stopped as a result, if they started earning even just a little bit of money from work, maybe even a little home-based business or something, they might very well qualify for Medicaid through their state's Medicaid buy-in program. So why is that so important? Well, because many, many people with disabilities cannot do without Medicaid. People typically need their Medicaid for medical expenses, and many people with disabilities need Medicaid because it covers services in the community that they depend on in order to be able to live in the community. Now, those are the rules. Those are the regular rules. Now I wanted to talk about rules under the COVID-19 emergency. There is another major piece of federal legislation that passed in response to the COVID-19 emergency, in addition to the CARES Act, passed actually earlier. It's called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And this law provided an essential protection for Medicaid for some people with disabilities and even some people without disabilities who get Medicaid. So we said that ordinarily, if SSI is suspended because of UI benefits, the person's Medicaid would ordinarily stop as well, with some exceptions. But the Families First Coronavirus Response Act changes that. One thing this law did was to offer a big pot of money to states if they agreed to certain rules. Under the Medicaid program, Medicaid is a partnership between the federal government and state government. The federal government pays a certain percentage of the cost for a state's Medicaid program. That state pays the rest. And the percentages are different from one state to the next, but it's generally a set amount. The federal government pays X percent, the state pays the rest. What the Families First Coronavirus Response Act does is it tells states, if you choose, we will give you more money for your Medicaid program. We'll cover an extra 6.2% of the cost of your program, which is a huge increase. But if a state wants that money, and I would venture to guess that every state does want that money, they have to meet certain conditions. And one of them is this: if a resident of that state gets Medicaid at any point during the COVID-19 emergency, they have to keep Medicaid and can't be forced to pay anything or anything extra for it until the COVID-19 emergency has ended, specifically through the end of the month, end of the calendar month, when the emergency is called off. By the way, when I refer to the COVID-19 emergency, I'm referring to the emergency declared by the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the emergency was officially declared to have started January 27th, 2020. So if a person got Medicaid January 27th or any day after that, up until the day that the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services for the federal government cancels the emergency, calls it off, that person has to keep Medicaid if that state wants that extra federal money, even if the person would not ordinarily qualify, including if they've got too much unemployment insurance. So this is a nice protection that will let people keep their Medicaid, even if they lose it due to unemployment insurance or would lose eligibility due to unemployment insurance or other reasons, they'll still be able to keep Medicaid until the emergency is over. Now, the CARES Act adds another provision that's very important regarding Medicaid. The CARES Act says that that extra $600 a week unemployment benefit that people can receive either through pandemic unemployment assistance or one of the other two benefits for people who get regular UI or whose regular UI has run out. All three groups are getting that extra $600 a week through the end of July. And the CARES Act says that extra $600 does not count as income for Medicaid or the Children's Health Insurance Program, which is a way for children and sometimes pregnant women to get Medicaid with higher incomes. So that's nice to know because it says that a person may still be financially eligible for Medicaid despite getting that extra $600 a week. Now, what happens if a person on SSI, even after the COVID-19 emergency ends, still has enough unemployment benefit, enough UI to stop their SSI and ordinarily their Medicaid? Well, once the emergency ends, their Medicaid would no longer be protected. But if they went back to work, earned just a little bit in all but 4 or 5 states, they could be eligible for the state's Medicaid buy-in program and get Medicaid that way. And then finally, if a person is getting SSI and their UI or their unemployment assistance benefit would ordinarily stop their SSI payment, they could potentially use a work incentive in the SSI program known as the Plan to Achieve Self-Support, or PASS for short. PASS is a work incentive that enables a person to pursue a work goal by helping them pay for expenses to reach that goal. And they get to receive higher SSI payments with the PASS plan than they would without it. So some people might choose to use a PASS to help them keep their SSI while they're receiving that unemployment benefit, although they'll need to be spending a good chunk of their income, most of it, to pay for expenses to reach their work goal. Okay, so there was a lot of detail there crammed into that last handful of slides. I'm going to pause for questions. Anything in the chat so far, Dallas?
So far, there's nothing. I don't see anything.
Not yet. Okay. We're going to go through a couple of examples involving unemployment benefits and SSI. The first example with Shaniqua is a person who's getting UI under the regular rules. And the second person, Pedro, will be getting unemployment benefits through the CARES Act. So Shaniqua was getting $240 a week gross wages. That's an average of $1,040 a month gross wages. And her average SSI payment was $305.50 a month. As I mentioned before, when a person on SSI goes to work, their SSI is reduced, but it's not reduced dollar for dollar. It's reduced by less than half of their unemployment benefit. I'm sorry, by less than half of their earnings, excuse me. Big misstatement there. So if Shaniqua earns $1,040 a month gross wages, her SSI will be reduced by actually less than $500 a month. So she'll have more money, but her SSI will be reduced. And Shaniqua lives in a state which, like most states, but not all, has a maximum SSI benefit currently of $783 a month for an individual. So after the reduction, her SSI goes down to about $305 a month. Now, Shaniqua was working for 2 years before she was laid off through no fault of her own. She applies for UI, and she's approved for a benefit of $110 a week, which is $477 a month on average. The first question is, what will her average SSI payment be while she receives UI? And the answer is it would be $326 a month, because all but $20 of that $477 a month UI benefit is going to count against her SSI. So $457 of the UI will reduce her SSI by that amount, by $457 a month. And after that $457 reduction, Shaniqua will have $326 a month of SSI left. Next question, what will her average total income be before any taxes? So remember, the unemployment benefit is taxable. And the answer is $803 a month. She's getting $477 from UI on average per month, and $326 a month on average from SSI. So Shaniqua is getting little enough unemployment that she can still keep a good chunk of her SSI. And along with the SSI, she'll keep her Medicaid. Now let's switch to Pedro. Remember, Pedro is becoming unemployed during the COVID-19 emergency, so his situation will be different. So Pedro started out with a full SSI payment before he started work 3 years ago. He's working full-time, or he's been working full-time, earning $440 a week gross wages. That's an average of $1,905 a month gross wages. And if you do an SSI calculation, you'll see with earnings that high from work, Pedro's SSI would be reduced to 0. But he would be eligible for a wonderful work incentive called 1619B. If you're not familiar with this rule, I encourage you to find out more about it. It's a double safety net that applies when a person's SSI is reduced to 0 because of their earnings. It lets that person remain eligible for SSI, even though they're getting a 0 SSI payment. And that does 2 things. It lets them continue to keep their Medicaid, and if anything happens to their job later, if they stop work or their earnings drop low enough, it lets them get their SSI payments back just by calling Social Security. They don't have to reapply. So it's a tremendous safety net, and it protects SSI eligibility. So even though Pedro's earning enough to stop his SSI, he's still eligible for SSI, and he keeps his Medicaid. So now Pedro is laid off due to COVID-19. He applies for UI. He's approved for $187 a week, plus, because we're under the CARES Act now, he's getting an extra $600 a week. So his grand total is $787 a week on employment benefits, which totals an average of $3,408 a month of unemployment. So how much SSI should Pedro get with that much in unemployment benefits, and what should happen to his Medicaid? Well, I can tell you, with that much unearned income, and remember they count all but $20 of it against your SSI, that's going to be way, way, way over the limit for him to keep an SSI payment. His SSI will go down to 0. for certain. What will happen to his Medicaid? Well, ordinarily, his Medicaid would stop. Remember that 1619B rule only applies if your SSI stops due to earnings from work, not due to unearned income. If your unearned income stops your SSI, unearned income such as unemployment insurance benefits, then ordinarily your Medicaid would stop as well. But remember, Pedro is getting Medicaid during the COVID-19 emergency. And that means if his state wants that extra federal money, which you can bet they do, they're going to have to continue his Medicaid at least until the last day of the month when the COVID-19 emergency is called off. So he's got a protection for a while at least. Okay, we're going to go through the interaction between unemployment benefits and Social Security, disability, and Medicare. This is much shorter and simpler than the impact on SSI and Medicaid. And then I'll break for questions again. So very simply, if a person gets Social Security, disability, and they start getting unemployment benefits, the unemployment benefits have no impact at all on their Social Security, disability. They can be receiving both, and they can keep the full Social Security, disability. It will not be reduced. So a person can be eligible for both UI and Social Security, disability at the same time. We know the UI will not reduce the Social Security, disability, and in all but maybe 4 states, Social Security, disability will not reduce UI benefits either. So in almost every state, about 46 of them, a person can be receiving both their full Social Security, disability and whatever unemployment benefits they qualify for. Now, since a person's Social Security, disability can continue if they're receiving Medicare by virtue of getting Social Security, disability, a person who gets Social Security, disability becomes eligible for Medicare after 2 years, then their Medicare will still continue. Now, in some states or with certain unemployment workers, eligibility workers, they may mistakenly interpret the fact that a person is getting Social Security, disability to mean that that person is unable to work. If a person is denied UI because they get Social Security, disability, they should appeal that. Because receiving Social Security, disability certainly does not mean you're unable to work at all. And many people who get Social Security, disability are even able to work full-time. Now, if they work full-time, they could eventually, sooner or later, have their Social Security, disability stop. But particularly if a person has proven their ability to work and they qualify for regular UI benefits, they should not be denied simply because they're getting Social Security, disability. And here's an example. Cecilia starts out with $920 a month of Social Security, disability insurance, SSDI. She's worked in her job for 5 years, earns $280 a week gross wages, which is $1,213 a month on the average. She's laid off due to COVID-19. She applies for UI. She gets approved for $120 a week of regular UI, plus an extra $600 a week for a total of $720 total benefits per week. And that's an average of $3,118 a month. So should her SSDI continue? And if so, how much? And how much total monthly income will she get? Well, as we just talked about, she can keep her SSDI, the full amount, the whole $920 a month. Her UI benefit has no impact on her SSDI. And her total income will be the $920 a month SSDI plus the $3,118 a month on average from the UI. And her total income is going to be over $4,000 a month, at least while she's still receiving that extra $600 a week unemployment through the CARES Act through the end of July. So as you can see, there are some low to moderate wage workers who are going to get a big windfall from unemployment benefits between now and the end of July. So to get more information about your own state's unemployment insurance program, because remember, they do differ significantly. Unemployment insurance programs differ significantly from state to state. You'll want to check your state's UI website. And we looked at the link on an earlier slide that you can go to find your state's UI website. And if you're a glutton for punishment, you could read part of the CARES Act at the link here on slide 46. And I'm going to pause before we jump into economic impact payments and see if there are any additional questions. Anything in the chat now, Dallas?
Yes, we have two new questions.
Okay.
The first one is from Juana, who says, is there a time limit to the PASS program?
Is there a time limit to the PASS program? There is. When a person uses a PASS, a plan to achieve self-support, they lay out what their work goal is, what the steps are they need to complete to reach that goal, and how long they expect it will take until they reach it. Now, there's no absolute maximum length of time that a PASS can last, but it does need to be time limited. And that time limit is agreed to, negotiated with the Social Security PASS specialist who reviews and approves it. In my experience, generally a PASS can last maybe a few years. And next question.
Okay, this one's from Michael. He says, is the application process for regular UI and CARES Assistant different, or do the states make that determination after an application comes in?
That's a good question, Michael. I can't speak for all states, but I know that some states at least, and any state that's reasonably intelligent about this, is going to set up a claims process in such a way that a person simply goes into a single application on the website. They answer all the questions, and then the state unemployment worker, the unemployment eligibility worker, is going to use their answers to those questions to determine what, if anything, the person would qualify for. Could they qualify for regular UI? Have they used up regular UI? Are they not eligible for regular UI, but potentially eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance? So I believe that's how most, if not all, states are going to be handling it. It's not the case, should not be the case. It would be completely illogical for a state to set up a system in which a person had to specify which program they were applying for. But it makes a lot of sense for a state to have a single application, have the person answer all the questions, and then the unemployment eligibility worker determine what, if anything, the person would qualify for. Okay, and no new ones since I just...
Actually, we have one new one.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Anne, who says, if someone receives SSDI and Medicaid, is there an impact on Medicaid? We have many people who rely on waiver services.
Yes, there are people who receive SSDI not SSI, and who still get Medicaid. There are actually many different ways to qualify for Medicaid. If you look at all the possible ways that the federal government allows states or requires states to use to enable people to qualify for Medicaid, the total is around 60. There are more ways to get Medicaid than there are ways to leave your lover. So the thing is that we've only talked about a couple of them. We've talked about SSI, we've talked about the 1619B rule, we've talked about Medicaid buy-ins, but there are many other ways as well. And if a person gets SSDI and unemployment insurance, or unemployment benefits like pandemic unemployment assistance, generally the unemployment benefits will count as unearned income and could affect the person's Medicaid eligibility. But I did mention that the CARES Act says that the extra $600 a week unemployment benefit does not count as income for Medicaid, which is really helpful because it means that that extra $600 a week benefit will not cause a person's Medicaid eligibility to stop, won't cause them to go over the income limit for whichever way they're getting Medicaid. But the other benefit, if a person gets regular UI or pandemic unemployment assistance, the other portion of their unemployment benefit, other than the extra $600 a week, will count as unearned income. And that may or may not cause them to go over the income limit for the Medicaid eligibility group that they're in. So it depends. I wish I could answer this question across the board, but since Medicaid programs are so different from state to state, it's a question that you would want to ask probably a WIPA project. WIPA, W-I-P-A, stands for Work Incentives, Planning, and Assistance. These are the Social Security funded benefit planning organizations that exist in every state. They have nationally certified benefit planners who can advise people, and it's a free service for people who get Social Security disability, SSDI, or SSI, and who are either working or interested in work. And to get connected with the WIPA project, you should call the Ticket to Work helpline. I'm going to see if I can remember the phone number, 1-866-968-7842, I believe. Again, that's 866-968-7842. If you call the National Ticket to Work helpline, they'll ask a few questions, and if the person appears eligible for the WIPA services, they'll refer them. So good question, Anne, and I'm sorry I couldn't give a more definitive answer. Any other new ones, Dallas?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. All right, so we'll talk about the economic impact payments now. These are also known as stimulus payments. And most Americans, particularly most adult Americans, are going to qualify for these payments. They're designed to stimulate the economy, to provide more purchasing power to Americans, to help keep the economy from collapsing. So who's eligible for economic impact payments? You have to be a U.S. citizen or a resident alien. Resident alien would be someone who's not an undocumented immigrant. Have to be in the U.S. legally, but you don't necessarily have to be a citizen. You do have to have a valid Social Security number. You can't be claimed as a dependent on another person's taxes. In fact, the law even says that you could not be claimed as a dependent on another person's taxes. Generally, you can be claimed as a dependent on another person's taxes if that person is paying out of their funds for at least half of your living expenses. Okay, so that's a key eligibility criterion here. This is the reason that many people with disabilities, even though they are adults, may not qualify for economic impact payments if their parents or someone else is claiming them as a dependent on their taxes. Okay, and you have to have adjusted gross income, that's basically taxable income, below certain limits. So how much will these payments be? The basic payment is $1,200 for an individual. It's $2,400 for a married couple who are filing a joint tax return. And you can get an extra $500 for each qualifying child. A qualifying child is a dependent child who is under age 17 and will still be under age 17 at the end of the year. So in other words, the child is 16 or younger, and on December 31st of 2020, they will still be 16 or younger. Now, I have heard reports of some parents getting the extra $500 payment for a child who is not a qualifying child, who's already 17 or even 18 by the end of the year. And that appears to be a glitch in the system, a mistake. I do not know whether that person might have to pay back that $500 or not, but they would not be eligible for it. So that's the basic payment. And an eligible person will receive the full basic payment, the full $1,200 or $2,400 for a married couple filing a joint tax return, plus the full $500 extra per qualifying child, if their income is below one of these limits. So if they're single and have no dependents, their income is their taxable income is under $75,000 a year, they'll get the full $1,200. If they're a head of household, which means they're single but they have dependents, if their income is under $112,500 a year, they'll get the full $1,200 plus the extra $500 for each qualifying child. And if they're married and they're filing a joint tax return, if their taxable income is under $150,000 a year, they'll get the whole $2,400 plus $500 for each qualifying child. Now, if their income is above these limits, then they could still get a payment, but it'll be reduced. It's going to be reduced by 5% of the amount by which their income exceeds the limit. So let's go through an example of that. Let's say a single person with no dependents, instead of only earning $75,000 a year, has taxable income of $85,000 a year. Well, that would be $10,000 more than the $75,000 limit, and that means their payment would be reduced by 5% of that extra $10,000. That means 5% of $10,000 is $500. So instead of that person getting $1,200, their payment would be reduced by $500, and they'd only get $700. So what do you need to do to get these payments? And this is the third most commonly asked question about economic impact payments. The most commonly asked question is, how much will I get? The third most commonly asked question is, what do I need to do to get it? And most people will get these payments without having to do anything. If a person has filed a federal tax return in 2018 or 2019, or both, they'll get a payment without having to do anything. Now, suppose a person doesn't file tax returns, they're not required to, but they get SSI, Social Security benefits. That could be either Social Security disability, retirement or survivor benefits, or railroad retirement benefits. And they've been getting those benefits since 2019 or earlier, then they don't have to do anything to get their payments. The IRS will have information about the benefits they received through copies of the 1099 forms that Social Security or the Railroad Retirement Bureau sends to people documenting the benefits they got for the year. Now, people who just started getting those benefits in 2020 and who haven't filed taxes in 2018 or for 2019 will not be included in this group who will get benefits automatically, because the IRS won't yet have information about those benefits they receive. Now, other people who don't qualify without having to do anything will need to enter information into a portal that the IRS established called Non-Filers Enter Payment Info Here. And it's at the link on slide 52. And people who should use that non-filers link to enter information to get their payments are people who get benefits from Social Security, SSI, or railroad retirement, don't file taxes because they don't have to. So they would ordinarily get their economic impact payments without having to do anything. But they have qualifying children and they want to get the extra $500 for each qualifying child. They'd go to the non-filers link to enter information about their qualifying children in particular, so they can get that extra $500 per qualifying child. Now, unfortunately, it's now past the deadline for people who get Social Security or railroad retirement benefits to use the non-filers link to give information about their qualifying children. So those people will not get the extra $500 per qualifying child during this round of economic impact payments. Does that mean they won't get the extra $500 per child at all? No. What it means is they'll have to file a tax return after 2020 ends, and they'll be able to get the extra $500 per qualifying child then. But they're going to have to wait a good while to get it. Now, people who get SSI rather than Social Security benefits have until May 5th to use the non-filers link to provide information about their qualifying children to get the extra $500 per child. Now, people who, as I mentioned earlier, didn't start getting Social Security, SSI, or railroad retirement benefits until 2020 and didn't have to file taxes and didn't file in 2018 or 2019, they should use the non-filers link because the IRS won't have their information. Also, people who did not file taxes in 2018 or 2019 and were not required to, and who are not required to and don't plan to file taxes for 2019. Remember, people have until July 15th to file 2019 taxes. Those people should also use the non-filers link if they're not getting those benefits that would qualify them for payments without having to enter the extra information. So payments are going to be directly deposited into bank accounts for certain individuals and couples. That's going to be those who get Social Security, SSI, railroad retirement benefits that are, if their benefits are directly deposited into their bank accounts and they don't file tax returns and they're not required to, their economic impact payments will be directly deposited into the same bank accounts where their government benefits go. People who had income tax refunds directly deposited into their bank accounts for 2019 or for 2018 will also have their economic impact payments go directly into the same accounts. So if a person doesn't qualify to have their payments automatically direct deposited, they can request direct deposit using another link that the IRS provides to its website called the Get My Payment tool. That's linked here on slide 55. Otherwise, the person will get the payment in the mail. The IRS will send it to the most recent address they have on file for the person. But that Get Payment tool may be helpful if the IRS may not have a current address for the person, or if the person wants to try to get it directly deposited into their bank account and they don't meet one of the conditions on the previous slide. So how do economic impact payments affect other benefits people might receive? Well, this is pretty nice and simple. The payments are treated as being tax refunds, and tax refunds do not count as income for any need-based public benefits that are wholly or partially federally funded. So the economic impact payments don't count as income for SSI, for Medicaid, for food stamps, also known as SNAP, which stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, for rental assistance programs funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, for temporary assistance to needy families, the welfare program for low-income families with dependent children, or for VA disability pensions. That's a need-based cash benefit that certain disabled veterans can receive. So in other words, the economic impact payments won't count as income for any of those benefits, won't affect them at all, won't reduce them, won't cause those benefits to stop. And the economic impact payments won't count as resources or assets for 12 months after they've been received. Many of you know that many benefits have limits on resources, assets, bank accounts, things like that. SSI, for example, has a resource limit of only $2,000. But if a person gets an economic impact payment, it will not count against that resource limit for 12 months. So the person has 12 months to either spend it or to convert it to a kind of resource that doesn't count, such as depositing it into an ABLE account. Also, the economic impact payments are not taxable. So they do not have to be declared on taxes, and you don't have to pay any taxes on them. Finally, can economic impact payments be withheld by creditors? I have bad news and I have good news. First, the good news. The good news is the payments can't be withheld to recover past due taxes or any other federal or state debts, with one exception, and that's past due child support. So if you owe back taxes or you owe a debt to the state, some fee that you didn't pay, whatever it might be, they can't take your economic impact payment to pay it back. But if you owe past due child support, they can take your economic impact payment to pay that. Now, the bad news is that private creditors may be able to try to claim economic impact payments to settle outstanding debts. Sometimes even people's own banks, if people owe, overdraft fees or other fees, may try to take the money out of people's economic impact payments. Even some nursing homes have been collecting or attempting to collect from people's economic impact payments if people were behind on payments that they owed to the nursing homes. Is that illegal? Apparently not. Is it unethical? I think so. A lot of people agree with me. So if a person's in that situation where a private creditor may be trying to claim some or all of their economic impact payment, it's recommended that they contact the state consumer affairs office or elder affairs office or a legal service agency like legal aid to see if they can get assistance fighting that. And the last slide here, slide 60, at the bottom shows you a link to an article on this topic that was published by the National Consumer Law Center that provides some strategies on how to protect people from getting those economic impact payments seized by private creditors. And for more information and details about the economic impact payments, you can go to the IRS Economic Impact Payments page, which is linked at the top half of slide 60. I should mention that there's new information coming out probably weekly, sometimes even more frequently, about economic impact payments. The new information will probably begin to slow down now that more and more people are getting the payments. But it's a good idea to check that link periodically if you'd like updated information. There's one bit of information I have not provided about economic impact payments in this webinar, and that is probably the second most common question that people ask, and that is, when am I going to get my payment? And I'm no fool, and you shouldn't be either. You don't want to put yourself in the position of telling people when to expect their payments, because this is all new stuff. We don't know if there will be glitches or problems or delays that will cause the IRS to be overwhelmed and unable to send out payments as quickly as they're anticipating. You don't want to tell somebody when their payments should be received. Why not? Because if they don't get them when they're supposed to, they're going to blame you. So if people ask me, when am I going to get my payments? My answer is, I don't know, but it's not supposed to take too terribly long. Some people have already received their payments. Many more are going to be sent between now and the end of May, but I will never tell anybody when to expect their payments. All right, and that wraps it up. So I think we have some time for about 10 minutes for additional questions. Anything else in the chat at this point, Dallas?
Not right now. Rachel asked something, but then she clarified and said you answered it.
Okay. All right. Well, I will give people another minute then to type in any final questions or comments, because we have about 8 more minutes left. If there's nothing else, we'll break early. I don't think anybody will object, but I'll give everyone another minute. Dallas, does the chat indicate whether anyone is typing?
No, but I can see messages as they come in. So I see a lot of people saying thank you for the great information.
Okay.
Thank you guys, useful information. So you're getting a lot of love.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. All right, wonderful. Well, then, if there are no new questions or comments, um, I want to thank everyone for participating today and stay safe and healthy. Goodbye.